welcome everyone to our second Municipal Golf Network webinar. The first one we discussed Winter Park down outside of Orlando, Florida, and that was a very different story than what we're going to tell today. That was about a community recognizing golf as an asset and investing in it. This story today, unfortunately, is not quite as rosy and upbeat, but a really important story. So I want to welcome in our panel, Craig Kessler, Richard Harris, and Bo Links. Craig Kessler is the Director of Public Affairs for the Southern Golf Association, the chair of the California Alliance for Golf's Legislative Committee, a member of the USGA's Advocacy Working Group, member of the PGA of America's Governmental Relations Committee, and former chair of both the Los Angeles City and Los Angeles County Municipal Golf Advisory Commissions. Richard Harris is the co-founder of the San Francisco Public Golf Alliance. He is a veteran of several golf campaigns over 5 decades, including efforts to preserve the Stanford Golf Course and the San Francisco Public Courses, Lincoln Park and Sharp Park. He's a member of the board of directors for the California Alliance for Golf. Bo Links is the co-founder of the San Francisco Public Golf Alliance. He serves as San Francisco's volunteer golf historian and is published author and accomplished amateur golf architect, having won the Lido design competition 3 times. Bo is a lifelong San Francisco resident who has played golf there for over 60 years. He formed the San Francisco Public Golf Alliance with Richard in 2007 to fight for the survival and advocate for the restoration of Sharp Park. So thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us here on our Municipal Golf Network webinar. And thank you all for everyone who's tuned in to listen in, and hopefully this will be a good hour for everybody. Richard and Bo, maybe Bo, if you could start with a little bit of the history of Sharp Park and a little discussion of why it's such a special place.
Well, you know, I'm a believer that every golf course is worth saving, and you have children in your family, they're all our children. Some kids, you know, you got to say they get closer to your heart than others. And you know, to have a public golf course that was designed by a master architect who employed all of these storied principles that he wrote about and spoke about and put them all in one place is truly extraordinary. And that's exactly what Alister MacKenzie did at Sharp Park. It was built and created at a time when golf was in its golden age, golf architecture was in its golden age, and San Francisco's other public courses, Lincoln Park and Harding Park, were overrun. People couldn't get tee times. And there was a piece of land down in Pacifica, 10 miles south of San Francisco, was donated to the city in the memory of a lawyer who had actually dropped dead in a courtroom in 1882 named George Sharp. His wife and a trust donated it to the city, and John McLaren, who created Golden Gate Park, knew what the ground was, knew they needed another golf course, and he turned to a fellow Scot named Alister MacKenzie and convinced him to design the course for free on the condition that if the city ever built it, he would be hired to supervise the construction. And that's what happened. And in between 1930 and 1932, the course was built. It opened in April of 1932 and has been open to the public ever since, you know, almost 90 years now. Really 90 years, almost to the dot. And, you know, it's been a course that has endured bad weather, erosion, everything, you know, benign neglect, but all the bones are still there. Today, there's 2/3 of the original golf course, and everybody who goes there, from architects like Jay Blasi and Tom Doak, who've helped us, to just ordinary people, there's a special vibration that goes right down your spine when you see that place, when you walk that place, and when you play that golf course. And as Ken Venturi said, this is Dr. MacKenzie's great gift to the American public golfer. And it's been under attack. We've now fought back the environmentalists who wanted to close it down, the golf haters who don't think golf is a worthy activity. And it's taken us about 15 years to do all that. And we're now in position to go forward with the full-blooded restoration work to bring back that course so it will look like it did in 1932. The original greens are still there. You just have to mow them out. We've done that the last 2 years at very little cost to show people what the original greens look like. There are a number of bunkers that have to be, of course, rebuilt and restored, and it needs new infrastructure. It needs an irrigation system and things like that, but we're on the doorstep of doing all that.
Great. Richard, I guess, can you talk about the founding of the San Francisco Public Golf Alliance, and what was the threat at that point that you guys were addressing to form the organization?
In the beginnings of it was actually in 2007, when a local parks advocacy group started in after Lincoln Park. And Lincoln is this golf course that's perched on an old cemetery on very hilly territory right above the Golden Gate. There isn't a flat 50 yards on that parcel. And a local parks group came in and they said, this needs to be soccer fields. And they got and it needs to be an event center. And it was basically an attack on what they thought was underused public property. And they wanted to use it instead of having the golfers use it. And we had to mobilize for that and make the arguments that you've already heard. It was a ridiculous proposal for soccer fields. There's not a flat piece of ground on it. And so we kind of disposed of that pretty quickly. And then that same parks group joined with an environmental group that said at Sharp Park, which is this Alister MacKenzie shrine, and the environmental group said, well, there's some frogs and snakes down there that are endangered, and the golf course should be closed and it should be turned into a nature preserve. And and they made the elitist argument, oh, golf's this elite sport, what are they doing there? And so we would show up at public meetings and we'd show up with the golfers who play there. Well, in San Francisco, the golfers are Filipino, Chinese, a good proportion of Blacks, Tongans, Samoans, whites, of course, men, women. I mean, we're completely diverse group of golfers at the public courses, and a lot of places have that. And it just blew the decision makers away, because the golfers were much more diverse group than the board of supervisors who would hear this, or the environmentalists who would show up. And we were, we basically made the arguments. It took years, because this is coastal property. We were dealing with a very complex regulatory agency. You got all of the Fish and Wildlife, you got the Coastal Commission, you got all kinds of regulatory agencies. And we had to deal with all of that through years of political and legal proceedings. Bo and I are lawyers, and we found wonderful pro bono legal assistance from absolutely top firm, the old Morrison Forestry firm. And we fought through 4 lawsuits, went to appeals. We went through the Coastal Commission a couple of times. And it's just kind of sticking with it and being willing to face down very well organized opposition. The environmentalists in particular are famous for their opposition. And we would show up and we would write letters. We would write more letters than the environmentalists and all of their organizations. And it blew people away that the golfers could do that.
Yeah. So that leads me to my next question, which is, at Sharp Park, there was this concern for endangered frogs and snakes. But we all know that the golf courses play an incredibly valuable role in certainly in urban environments as open space and as habitat. How much of what you guys were fighting was you using the environment as a counter argument to these groups, letting them know what an important role golf can play in these communities as an environmental asset?
A lot of it. We went and we got the lead. We got the lead scientists on it, and we would go in and we'd make the obvious argument. The golf course has been there. The frogs and snakes showed up on the golf course, and the reason they're there is because the golf course is not housing. It doesn't have the kids and the poachers and all of that. The golfers protect it, and we that was a winning argument, and we won a couple of times at the Coastal Commission, which is a very famously environmentalist friendly organization, and we convinced all of their experts of it.
Well, there's no phrase that facts are stubborn. And what Richard said is so true. And we had great experts. One of the species we were talking about is the California red-legged frog, and the San Francisco garter snake is the other one. And what the environmentalists got backwards is they wanted to get rid of the golf course and allow the ocean to come in, managed retreat from the coastline. And what they never got straight is that the frog and the snake are freshwater species. They can't exist in a brackish salt marsh. And that's what Sharp Park was before Alister MacKenzie transformed it into a freshwater oasis. It's the golf course that created the habitat for those species. And they were forced down there by development elsewhere in the Bay Area. It was the golf course that was their salvation. And properly managed, they thrive, and they have thrived. And we had, as Richard indicated, just great legal assistance. We also had great scientific assistance from the top experts. And we were able to make the case that we are the true environmentalists, not the opponents. And we've been very successful with that. It's been very difficult, very long, very expensive, but it's got us to where we are today.
You guys have mentioned the environmental argument and also the diversity argument, showing the decision makers that this is truly a diverse group of people who use Sharp Park. What other weapons were useful in your guys' fight?
Just the golfers themselves. When your turf is threatened, when you're under attack, you can marshal the golfers. And turns out golfers from the earliest recorded history, somebody has always been after the golfers, whether it's the king or whether it's the church, and it goes back to the 1400s. So golfers have always had some adversity, and it's just part of the golfer's turf, and the golfers have to understand that somebody else is going to be after them. Somebody is going to disapprove of them playing golf on Sunday or hanging out in the at the 19th hole instead of being with their nose to some grindstone. And the golfers are always going to be in a position where somebody is going to be after them. Well, golfers aren't bad people. They got families, they got friends who understand them, and golfers have a lot of allies. And you just have to know that and then go get people to help you. And sometimes you have to go outside the golf community to find, allies who are environmentalists or whoever. It's going to be different from place to place. You find your allies, but your basic group is these people who are under attack, which is the golfers, and the golfers are, they're women, they're kids, and you just show everybody up at the public meetings, and you try to make sure that when you're showing up at a public meeting, you got people who look like the decision makers. You don't want to be in front of a group of decision makers and not have somebody in your group who they can relate to. Because if they can't relate to you, they'll vote you down.
I think there's another component to it too, and that is that, and Will, you alluded to open space, which any community needs open space for people to just chill out. But beyond that, golf is part of an overall recreational program. I give you one example, but you talk about underutilized public property. In Golden Gate Park, there's a football stadium, Kezar Stadium, where the 49ers used to play. I mean, that place isn't used at all. It's massive. They used to play a game, 12 games a year. That's all they used it for. Maybe once in a while you have a track meet there, but not very much. Sits empty. And the Opera House isn't used all the time. A basketball court isn't used all the time. A skateboard park isn't used all the time. I think we should have all those things for every group to do whatever they want to do and relax and enjoy and have recreation. And golf is part of that. And coupled with that is teaching non-golfers what the game can do for people and what the game can do for the community. The first tee is a classic example of using golf to better lives. And I know NLT, Washington is doing all that stuff with the Langston course and the other surrounding courses. It's part of a community center. That's what a golf course is in Scotland. That's what it should be in the United States. And Sharp Park is that in Pacifica. It's a hub of community activity.
What other activities go on there other than golf?
Local Democratic Club meets there once a month. The Rotary Club meets there in the clubhouse. They have a restaurant that's very popular. It's a popular eating place in town for non-golfers. It's a community meeting house.
Yeah. And so was part of your argument showing the decision makers that was indeed the case, that
Absolutely.
Maybe, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I will say that the tricky part, and it still is today, is that Sharp Park is in Pacifica. It's not within the 49 square miles of San Francisco, although it's owned by San Francisco. But it has value to the city, and it has value to the area, and people can see that.
And then I guess the one final thing we should discuss about the fight to save Sharp Park would be the financial, right? I mean, I'm sure at just like most municipal golf courses, there have been sort of boom and bust times. And I guess the question is, a lot of people would argue against municipal golf, especially in places where these golf courses aren't necessarily contributing to the general fund or losing money. What was the story at Sharp Park, and what were you guys doing to tell that story?
Well, one of the things that, and Richard will speak to this too, one of the things that Sharp Park does for the city is that properly run, it makes money. A lot of people want to argue that it loses money. It makes money because what the city does every year is they slice off several $100,000 in so-called administrative costs. That all it is a line entry item that allows them to take money from that golf course and put it in their general parks fund. And it's a facility that is, in terms of economics, it's underutilizes what it could be if it's properly restored with a, better clubhouse, with a better food operation that can serve more people and be more efficient. There's no question this can be an economic engine for the city and the surrounding community. And we make that case to people. The difficulty in a place like San Francisco is that the city budgetarily, if that's even a adjective or verb,
Good. Oh.
has so many other alligators nipping at their heels, from homelessness to fentanyl to transportation, that it's hard to scrape money out to spend for a restoration of the golf course. That's why we're going to be raising money through our charitable foundation to do that. We're in the process. That's our task right now, is what we're engaged in.
That particular issue on do golf courses make money or not, that is within the ambit of local decision making, and it has to do with a city's administrative costs and how much the city wants to subsidize its golfers. They set the greens fees, and often cities subsidize all kinds of activities for their residents, and they will make a decision, and they'll say, well, we want to, et cetera. So to then look at a city's bottom line on this park as opposed to that park, as opposed to this clubhouse, et cetera. Those are all decisions that are made by a city, whether they use it, they want to make a positive income flow or not. And it has to do with other decisions that a city makes as well. Do they want to subcontract it out, or do they want to keep city employees on it? And those are all local decisions. And sometimes you have to get way into a city's books and to sort that out. And sometimes that's virtually impossible because it's so obtuse. Anyway, we've done all of that, and sometimes people will have to go way into weeds to get to the bottom of issues like this.
So you need lawyers, environmentalists, accountants. You need everybody, right?
That's right.
And you need Richard Harris.
Well, Bo, you're probably right that every community needs to have someone who's incredibly passionate and sort of driving the bus. I guess the question is, what did you guys do to organize? I mean, you guys started San Francisco? It's a nonprofit, correct? Right?
Yeah.
You've got people coming through the gate every day, and they walk past the starter, and you just basic political organization. You set up a table, you put out a petition, you take names, and pretty soon you've got something like an organization.
And it's free. There's no dues. All we want to do is have you on our mailing list so we can advise you what's going on. And people step up, maybe they give you $50 or $100, which is great. We have a tournament once a year. We call it a celebration, not a tournament. And we've got a few real angels who come through for us big time when we need a project, whether we're publishing a book, which we did, on Sharp. We had one of our donors underwrote the whole thing, and we've just gotten a lot of really good help from people who want to participate. And that's the other thing, is that I think there's this untapped reservoir of resources. Just as, I had done a thing with Craig and the folks, the SCGA, we called it the old college try, that every university in America exists because the alumni support it. And those endowments are huge. They are huge. Golf needs to tap that alumni to support these campuses. That's what we need to do. That's why there are microscopes in those chem labs and those universities, and why there are books in the library and computers in the library. And we need to tap those resources. Those golfers are out there. They want to help. They want to participate. We have to ask them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, having started NLT 2-3 years ago now, just going around the country and talking to people, and just hearing how important municipal golf has been to so many people's lives. It's about how do you organize those people, not just on a local level, but on a national level, so that there are resources that different communities can tap into when they have to make these fights. So, before we step back and look at sort of the state of municipal golf in California, you guys alluded to that you guys are ready for the investment to do the restoration. Can you guys give us an update on where it stands now? And I know there's sort of a tricky, this issue of the water delivery system and the recycled water. I mean, if we could get into that real briefly, and then we'll transition a little bit to kind of AB 1910 and what's going on.
Well, let me give you a real quick snapshot. We put together a promotional brochure last year, and the latest thing we're waiting on, we hope to have it, God willing, and the creek doesn't rise by the end of the month, but dates are flexible. We have contracted with Peter Flory, who did the video that spurred Mike Kaiser to rebuild the Lido course in Wisconsin. And we have commissioned him to do a similar video of Sharp Park, which he's engaged in doing right now. And once we have that video, we've got the plans drawn, we've got the budgets. Now we will have the package to really make the push and the presentation to the big donors that we're going to need to raise the money to get this thing done.
Great. And I guess if the money comes in, is the city on board, or are you guys still fighting that fight?
We're still fighting some of it. The president of the Rec and Park Commission is very supportive of what we're doing. But I will tell you, in my view, I'm kind of cold-blooded about it. There's one thing the city responds to, and that thing is money. Okay. We have the money, we're going to get the deal. We don't have the money, we're not going to get the deal. And the course will just limp along. It's that simple. It's A or B. Yeah. And that's how we're going to present this to the people we need to step forward and support us. And we know who they are. And they had somebody who loved tennis who paid to rebuild the whole tennis program in Golden Gate Park, $25 million project, all charitable. Golfers are going to do the same thing at Sharp Park. And
the water issue, is that something that the San Francisco Public Golf Alliance will have to pay as well, or is that a separate issue completely?
It's separate. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Okay. The city 10, 12 years ago built a $14 million recycled water delivery system, designed 80% for that golf course. And they put it in, they put all the pipes in, they put the laterals on only 4 holes. So the system is there. It's a matter of putting the laterals to deliver the irrigation water to the remaining 14 fairways. The city has already very heavily invested in that. And when they do it, don't know when they're going to do it. They're overdue to do it now. And California is under a lot of water pressure. There's state water politics are not going to allow golf courses to use potable water when there is recycled water available. And exactly how that plays out, we will see. We will be nudging everybody.
Great. Well, Craig, that's a decent transition as we move from the local to the state. I know water is crucial out there, and it's been a very dry winter. The big news out in California for the last 5-6 months has been this push in the California state legislature to allow localities, municipalities to basically sell off their municipal golf courses. I'm probably simplifying it a little bit too much, to developers in order to put in affordable housing And you've been on the front lines of fighting AB 1910, which is the Golf Endangerment Act. Could you give everyone who's tuned in an overview of what's been going on and where it stands today?
Well, Will, it's a little bit worse than that. It's not just a bill that enables municipalities to chop their municipal golf courses into affordable housing complexes. It actually provides a huge grant to facilitate that. Now, the author calls it a conversation, but the truth is you need a development deal. And so in essence, the state is, I hate to use that verb, bribing, but in essence, creating a strong preference to do that. And I would add that with all of the enormous public spaces in California, not just all the parks, but the enormous land conservancies, this particular bill decided to single out one and only one park function. Bo Links was very articulate. We forget sometimes that municipal golf is part of parkland systems. And in fact, California courts have established very clearly that municipal golf courses are parks for all purposes under the law of California. So in essence, if a bill were to come and take, well, just to put it in, let me put two things in perspective. So almost within the entire limits of the city of Los Angeles, second largest city in the country, with a housing problem, which pretty much parallels San Francisco at this point in terms of affordability and access, we have used primarily public money to set aside to take permanently out of circulation 155,000 acres in the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. We've taken a close look, and these are rough estimates, but if we took all 960 golf courses in the state of California, they only would cover 144,000 acres. That's all of them. That's golf courses in the middle of the Central Valley. I know a lot of persons who maybe not familiar with California think of it in terms of San Francisco, San Jose, maybe San Francisco or San Diego, but the state is almost 1,000 miles long and has enormous swaths of farmland and open space. So when you consider you take all of them, you lump them together, and there would still be plenty of land left over. So the notion of solving an affordable housing shortage problem by singling out golf is, well, pretty preposterous. Yet it has somewhat legs because of all the caricatures we know, all the things that are said of golf about being elite. Richard is going to cringe, but when I use this phrase, but to the degree to which that people look at golf as sort of like too much land, that uses too much water, that benefits the too few, of taking too much from society for too long. And that's a cruel caricature, but that's the way in which I would say Assemblymember Garcia looks at it. And we came to understand during this that we'd have had a slightly different view of this bill, perhaps, if seeing all of her tweets and all of her campaign for this bill, had we seen housing, but all we saw were golf balls and golf clubs and so forth. And it seemed to be stimulated more by anti-golf animus than being pro-housing. So what this bill has a long history. It was in the 2021 session under a different number. It failed in appropriations. It came back in 2022 under the number you gave it, 1910. It flew through the Housing Policy Committee, as all housing bills do. And it looked like it was going to get stopped in the Local Government Committee when the author had to pull it on April 6th, but she did a lot of scrambling. This bill is very important to her, apparently. And she kept it and got it through local government by one vote, and that one vote was conditioned on a series of amendments that have yet to be published, but the two of them made a deal to agree to it. The bill goes to the appropriations suspense hearing again this Thursday. And I never predict anything in politics. I'll simply say I think it's more likely than not that the bill dies this Thursday. But if it doesn't, it's facing a much tougher road in the Senate, and it's struggled to get to where it is at this point, whether it succeeds or fails on Thursday, in large part because of a pretty unified golf community that I think made all of the arguments that you heard about Sharp Park, but in essence writ large for the entire state, and brought in national organizations. I mean, for the first time in its history, the United States Golf Association weighed in officially with this, and that has an impact. There are legislators who play golf. They may not like the public to know that, but we kind of know who plays and who doesn't. You're in Washington, D.C., so our junior senator, Alex Padilla, I know he plays golf because I teed it up with him when he was chair of the LA City Council. We played one of the Griffith Park golf courses, heck, more than once. We played twice when he was president of the city council, and he was about a 10 handicap then. So I don't think he suffered. I think he likes the game of golf, and we have a lot of lawmakers and so forth. And so when they see organizations like the Northern Cal Golf Association, Southern Cal Golf Association, United States Golf Association, that they associate not with the business of golf, but with the game, the sport, the activity, the recreation, the open space of golf, it sort of changes the dynamic a little bit in their thinking. So I think also for the first time, look, my job is public affairs director for the Southern California Golf Association, and I chair that legislative committee for the California Alliance for Golf. So I'm dealing with a lot of legislation, a lot of regulation, a lot of bills, and most of it is just about tweaking around the edges, suggesting to authors that if they amended it slightly, and that usually works. Most of it is under the radar, not particularly visible. But in my time, this is the only bill I've seen floated that had somewhat legs, that took direct aim at the golf community. We call it a community here, and golf community, and really nothing else, and sort of singled it out for excommunication from a parks community of which it's been a part for 100 years. Because you're part of National Links Trust, and you're part of this group that's doing some great work to revitalize those 3 municipal golf courses in the nation's our nation's capital. There once upon a time, and modern golf has made incredible errors in overlooking this, because I think all of us on this broadcast probably understand that it was government's decisions to build golf courses at the turn of the 20th century as part of the national parks movement, the conservation movement, as the health movement, and that none other than President William Howard Taft was the biggest advocate for constructing that municipal system, Will, that your group is busily revitalizing and re-energizing. And it had a lot of support from that. And we know here in California, so much of the energy and so much of the support, not just for public golf, but also for private golf, came from the side of a political aisle that, well, I'll just call it the left side of the political aisle, in which these things were seen as powerful community assets. At minimum, they were seen as ways in which a great game could be played. I'm going to quote William Howard Taft from his 1909. And mind you, this is like 3 months after he's inaugurated as president of the United States. He might have had a lot on his plate, but he opined in an op-ed as to why the National Park Service should build those 3 golf courses ultimately that they built some years later, on the theory that golf was such a great game, it shouldn't just be restricted to those who can afford private club dues or would float their yachts on the harbors of Newport, Rhode Island. And that energy got us to the point of, call it a subsidy if you like, because much of the early history of municipal golf was subsidized. The taxpayer money was used to buy properties, then to build it. And then quite honestly, there was a fee structure, but the fees often didn't cover the cost. Well, those are bygone days, at least in California, which the National Golf Foundation tells us is dead last in terms of golf accessibility per golfer. They tell us that we'd have to build 533 public golf courses tomorrow to be raised to the national average. And I'm doing this interview from Los Angeles County, which is the worst of the bottom in terms of supply and demand. And so thus some of our take is a little bit different, because municipal golf courses here, quite honestly, make a lot of money for their parks. They subsidize park systems. Notwithstanding that, there have been moves, even one very notable one in Orange County, in which that was clearly a very profitable, successful, and revenue generating golf course. But there were groups, not in this case, not housing, but other open space activities that wanted that and are willing to pay $100 million to get it. And I think golfers need to keep that in mind. And I think there are these thoughts out there that somehow the golf is not highly utilized. We heard this phrase so much in the 1910s. These underutilized golf courses. Since every municipal system in Southern California on their internet reservation system, the entire systems are sold out till 6 p.m. at this time of year within less than 40 seconds. It's hard for us as golfers. It's hard to know it's underutilized. But they drive by and they see, two or three, they see two groups on a hole and they think that's underutilization. I think, as Bo said, Kezar Stadium, the Opera House, the Rose, the Hollywood Bowl, for that matter, when you drive by soccer fields and baseball diamonds, where if the AYSO, the Little League aren't playing, they're pretty much empty. And to really nail that down, if you're close to these issues like I am, about 5 years ago, the city of Los Angeles, actually retained an outside firm to study all of their parks offerings. Golf turned out to be the highest utilized in terms of more persons use their golf courses than any other active recreational amenity. And tennis finished dead last, by the way. And to the city's credit, I always said, they didn't use that as a rationale to get rid of the tennis courts. The U.S. Tennis Association stepped in with a facilities program and said, maybe if we helped you fix up those courts because they had gone into disrepair, and maybe if we did a little bit of programming, we could pick it up. But nonetheless, whenever you see just a tiny drop of golf's blood in the water, the first call is, let's get rid of it. And the misunderstandings about the utilization rates and the value it brings to the community are simply incredible. And even down to the point where in the 1910 battle, we had to point out, because the author kept talking about walking by this golf course in her community and had fences to keep people out. Now, we all scream, no, the fences keep the golf balls in. Trust me, a public golf course wants people to go in there and have lunch, have community meetings, only in San Francisco because the Democratic clubs meet at the golf courses, but actually in Los Angeles as well, and various other places, but Rotarians and all kinds of groups. And of course, all of the local community groups that use municipal golf courses and private clubs to do huge charitable fundraisers, not necessarily for the golf properties, but for all kinds of charities, all kinds of functions, hospitals, schools, all those kinds of things, that kind of activity. And golf has been horribly remiss on two counts. Failing to understand, instead of trumpeting the Muni and recognizing that it is what brought us to where we got at our peak. And we're coming back to that now in 2021, 2022, we're back up. We're actually playing more golf now than we ever have in the past. But instead of trumpeting the role that governments played in expanding the game and bringing so many people in, again, I work for the Southern California Golf Association. So our clubs, we're an association of clubs, and we have 14 guys at the local union hall that play different munis every month, and that's a club. Then we have the Los Angeles Country Club or Riviera Country Club, which are a little bit different. But at the end of and so I get to visit a lot of these. And when I sit with boards or I sit with green committees, I always ask them, well, how did you end up here? Almost none of them are to the country club born, and more than half of them, their story is either as a kid, my mom or dad dropped me off and I had a $2 pass per week to play unlimited golf, or I was in my late 20s and there were free golf lessons at the local community. And I thought, I'm not going to play baseball or football anymore, so maybe I should try this game. And then whether it's a professional practice or a business, 30 years later, they make a lot of money. And when people make a lot of money, they spend more on what they like. So they may have driven a 10-year-old, jalopy when they were 27 and broke, and now they drive a Tesla or maybe a Bentley. And the same thing with golf. They may have played munis, and at some point we tend to focus on there. Most of golf in this country is not Augusta National or Pine Valley or any of those kinds of places. We know 75 to 77% of it is public, and a substantial part of that is in the affordable accessible. So that was what was at stake in 1910. That's the message we had to communicate out there. I think we communicated it well. I think that from the start of the campaign in favor of this bill to the end of the bill, we took great note that even its proponents, which started off thinking that by denigrating the game of golf, they would push their bill, they ended up saying really kind things about golf. Now, I understand we love, and part of it was because even the author was contacted by persons within her district and by office holders within her district that let her know that in no uncertain terms, they kind of liked the municipal golf courses in their community and they thought it brought value. And they were not particularly crazy about the bill. So, but I'm going to echo something that both Richard and Bo said, but Richard said it a little bit more directly. Golf in all what's happening, you may think it's California, but it's not. The politics of California tend to be echoed when it comes to municipal golf in every large city. So the politics of Atlanta on land use are not that much different from Los Angeles, or well, everything's a little different from San Francisco, but not quite that different.
Happily so.
And the same thing, but I've also added, I've used the San Francisco Public Golf Alliance to those who in many places in America say, oh, we can't beat City Hall, we can't win these battles, we're overwhelmed by all of our opponents. I say, these folks won every political and legal battle in San Francisco, California against some pretty formidable environmental groups, every one of them. And if golf can win every political battle in San Francisco, California, stop your whining. If you're in Houston or Atlanta or Washington, D.C., or you're in Newark, New Jersey, your job is a lot easier. Or Los Angeles, California, where it's easier a little bit than San Francisco as well, although shockingly the politics are more similar than most people who live outside of California understand. You can do that. And there are powerful arguments, and they're not necessarily the arguments that establishment golf has made all that well. But I'm encouraged, whether it's the USGA, the PGA of America, I'm seeing the national organizations pivot to that. My hope is, as whether it's NLT or you're here in San Francisco or most certainly Winter Park, Florida, as you recognize, as Bo said, money talks. And I'm going to speak again, my own experience. I know that professional sports in the city I'm in, the Dodgers have basically rebuilt every park, baseball field, and every school in LAUSD over the years. Galaxy is soccer franchises rebuild. They do enormous facilities work. The Rams and the Chargers have come here and they're doing all kinds of things. As I pointed out, the U.S. Tennis Association stepped in when they saw that report from the city of Los Angeles. They saw skull and crossbones across tennis programs in the nation's second largest city, and they stepped in with a facilities program. So if anyone from the PGA Tour is listening, and maybe somebody is listening, there's a professional golf adjunct as well that needs to recognize it also has to get in this space, not just rely upon the charitable, upon the good works. We're lucky in golf. There are only so many Mike Kaisers and Bo Links and Richard Harrises, and there are benefactors all over this country that I don't know about. Shel Salo in Chicago. They're all over the place. And we can't just depend upon the kindness and the generosity of a few. The game is huge. Again, you go back, and this was National Golf Day a few days ago, and they like to trumpet that golf's an $84 billion industry. Might have to take just a little small fraction of that and begin to recognize that once upon a time, governments substantially subsidized golf. Even now, when they don't, they take money out of it. Frequently, as Richard stated, we've encouraged a lot of cities to bring in outside forensic accountants to actually tell them what their golf systems are really generating. And I'll use the example of Ventura. When they got done with that, what had been reported as a loss, a forensic accountant said, no, actually you've been making quite a bit of money here, and it's been going to the general fund. And that changed the dynamic enormously. So golf, in part, everyone talking here, Will, obviously, Bo, Richard, Craig, and so forth, we understand all these things. And I think it's incumbent upon us to talk to golf's powers that be, that we have too long, instead of trumpeting the role of municipal golf, we've denigrated it. And those chickens have come home to roost. So when we hear some of these things come back and we're taken aback, we're sort of startled by some of the caricatures and the misperceptions. I always challenge people to say, how much are they misperceiving, or how much are they accurately perceiving of what we put out about the game? Because we, instead of trumpeting, Pine Flats Muni in the middle of Kansas and the great thing it does to build the game there, we like to talk about Pine Valley. And I always liken it to this, and we need to, if you have a conclave of people in the car business, go to an international conference, and a Lamborghini drives into the showroom, they go crazy. They're car people. They love an expensive sports car. But when they start talking about the meat and potatoes of what they do to make their livings and drive their businesses and help their shareholders, it's not that car. It's the ones they sell all over the world. It's the Toyota Corolla and the Honda Civic and so forth. That's where they make their money. Golf's the same thing. Every once in a while we say, don't people understand golf is 75 or 80% public? Well, no, we know that because occasionally we put it down on a sheet of paper. But what we convey to everyone is a very different message, and it comes across as an elitist message. And I'm going to suggest not only is that wrong, it's not very intelligent because it hasn't served us well over the years. I know you asked me some very specifics about 1910, and I could speak for 4 hours about all the political machinations and all the back and forth. And until you've been to Sacramento, California, that's our capital, and see the way that particular sausage is made, and we have to participate in that. I don't want to scare everyone because golf is a wonderful game and a high-minded subject, and politics not quite as much, but we need to dive into those things as well and get our hands a little bit dirty because our fate increasingly is being decided in those kinds of places. Now, obviously, you've let me talk on and on and on.
Yeah, well, I haven't been able to get a word in edgewise, Craig.
No,
But,
that's okay.
it's really great, and your passion is it's obviously this is not just a job for you. This is a life's work. So, the Southern California Golf Association. Do most golf associations have a public affairs officer? And I feel like you've been maybe it's just because the fights have been so public. You've been really leading the charge on this. And I guess the follow-up question would also be, if there's people in communities out there who are looking for help to protect their municipal golf courses, what should be their course of action vis-a-vis their state golf association or their local golf association?
Well, I can tell you because the United States Golf Association has made a definite pivot with this advocacy working group, which was in its infancy. I'm seeing that stimulate interest in amateur associations, kind of dipping their toes in the same waters that the SCGA dipped its toes into many, many years ago. So that's beginning to happen. I would encourage them to call their amateur golf association for no other reason. I think something the GCSA was fascinated with in the 1910 campaign. We actually have access to like real life golfers who are not in the business, who are approaching legislators in districts which matter the most. That's the thing that matters the most, and get away from golf as a business and go down to what is our real strength. In this state, we think about 3.4 million people play this game. They are your best advocates. I think Richard and Bo said the same thing in San Francisco. They will show up at City Hall. And when they do, when it's a municipal issue, they look like the people they elected at City Hall. And here's a little secret. Sometimes the environmentalists don't. Anyway, Bo has his hand up. I don't know.
Well, I wanted to just add to what Craig is saying, that the USGA, and I've been involved with the USGA as a committeeman for over 30 years now, that they have made a pivot, and the advertising is more hip. The PSAs are more hip, and you have to get the faces of golf. You need these marquee celebrities. Steph Curry is, to me, the prototype. This is one of the most popular athletes in the world. He's a golf nut. He's a golf nut. They got to get him out there talking about golf. And we need more of that. That ad they did with Don Cheadle, where he's in a bar and he's talking about the US Open. He's got a drink in he ends and he says, "E pluribus unum, baby." It's a great ad that every American can relate to. I think anybody around the world could relate to it. And I'm really energized that they're starting to do that. And again, to follow what Craig is saying, where's Titleist and where's FootJoy and where are all these companies? They got to step up, and John Deere and Toro and these guys, they got to step up and help out with this thing. They have to do that. They have a self-interest in doing that.
If we don't do these things, golf will look like the caricature that so irritates us. It'll go back to won't be a rich man's game. It'll be a rich man's and women's game. And the only progress we will have made is that it won't be a rich white man's game. It'll just be a rich man's and women's game of various different types. I don't think that's the future we want. I think we want a broad-based game that can approach 30 million or more adherents who actually play golf, not necessarily go to a bar. But so I think that's what's at stake. And I think so many of the problems we see now were almost inevitable on the way we conducted ourselves. Again, I didn't want to bore all your listeners with the arcane details of the politics that I play, because when I actually articulate it, it scares me. So I can only imagine the listeners here are people who I think are probably passionate about public golf or passionate about the game. There is no difference. I think one of the things, and it's along the lines of your question, Will, one of the great things we accomplished in Southern California is golf is one. And and that is not true everywhere in America. In fact, in many parts of America, municipal golf is totally removed from the golf ecosystem. Here, it's intimately within all of golf's institutions. There is no difference between elite country clubs, and they're there, and 9-hole munis out in the middle of nowhere that are struggling to keep their doors open. We tend to, it's all about golf. And I've been encouraged in the 1910 battle that so many, what I would call private clubs that don't see themselves, as municipal golf, they're the farthest thing from it, have often called and said, what can we do to help? This is our fight too.
Yeah, that's
We
great.
need to get to that. And so golf needs to reorient itself so that golf is golf is golf, a club is a club is a club. And in that respect, they're all equal. Some have better conditions and cost a lot more than others, but they're the same game.
Yeah.
And I hope the next time you do this seminar, we don't have 3 old white men talking.
Well,
We
yeah, I
need
mean, it's
women, and I'm not,
Bo, I
we
mean, you're
need-
absolutely right.
this is the point of, we need
Yeah.
the spokespeople that look like the audience. And we need more than anything else, we need a younger generation of people. Richard, I won't speak for Craig, but I'll speak for Richard and myself. We had hair when we started this battle. And we need new blood. We need the next generation of folks to come forward and be part of all this.
But I'll add, Will, if you look at the board of directors of the Southern California Golf Association, it's 2/3 to 3/4 public. And it looks an awful lot like a municipal golf course in Los Angeles, California on a Saturday morning, men and women and everything. It doesn't look like the three of us, and I prefer to be called late
Happily.
middle-aged. I prefer late middle-aged, Bo.
You're the young one here among.
You
Well-
haven't seen my x-rays.
This has been a really great conversation. Bo, I completely concur with you. We need new blood, but we're very happy with the blood we've got on this call today.
Happy to be part of it.
Thanks.
It's been a wonderful conversation. I hope everyone who tuned in enjoyed it, hopefully learned something, and we'll keep fighting the good fight. And thank you, Craig. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Bo.